Hey guys, remember to like the video and hit subscribe.
You might want to, defend him and say, well, I'm sure he does know the difference. But then if that's the case, why is it that in the 4 years of Donald Trump, where our economy was doing so well, why the fuck were we running record deficits before COVID? Why was this happening? If Donald Trump and the Republicans are so good about tackling our debt and doing something about the deficit, why was he still running record deficits while the economy was exploding 20, 25% year over year over year? Why was Donald Trump trying to use Twitter to bully Powell, to bully the Federal Reserve, to keep interest rates low? Why was Donald Trump sending his Department of Justice into the states to try to fabricate election results? Why was Donald Trump trying to bully Jeff Sessions or Comey or Christopher Wray to kill investigations related to him or people around him when people in his close company, like Roger Stone, were directly communicating with foreign adversaries in order to leak information about about the Democrats? Donald Trump is easily one of the worst presidents of all time, and his character should reflect on the people that defend him as well. Because remember, the only way to defend Donald Trump is to ignore reality, to be delusional, to pretend that everything under his administration didn't happen, to pretend that things under Biden have happened that haven't happened, and to pretend that somehow in the future he's going to be able to do all of these things that he had a monumental failure of attempting during his 4 years. And remember, it's going to be with an entirely new administration because nobody that works with Trump ever wants to work with him again, because either they see that Trump is corrupt, or he calls them a rhino. And so now we have a new Trump. We've got a new vice president with Trump, a guy that said he would co-sign onto all of the malicious activity that Trump wants to do, which Pence wasn't willing to go along with. God knows who he'd want to staff the Department of Justice with, or what any of his other cabinet positions would be like. And God help us all. Even if Trump loses the election, honestly, even if he loses the election by a landslide, the fact that there are so many tens of millions of Americans that have been lied to and tricked and deceived by the figures that were supposed to be on the left. Remember when we were supposed to have a George Soros controlling all of our communications, and instead we got an Elon Musk who is full-throatedly, avowedly, pro-Trump and posting AI misinformation about Kamala Harris, on a social media platform. Remember when the Hunter Biden laptop suppression was like the worst thing that's ever happened in the world? And then we get a JD Vance leak, and all of a sudden, now Republicans believe in foreign interference. Now people leaking stuff about actual politicians. Believe it or not, Hunter Biden never ran for anything. I don't know if people remember that or not. Now it's a huge problem. Censoring stories was supposed to be the worst thing. We care about doxing, we care about all these things now. It's crazy how Republicans discover morality and standards whenever they have to levy any type of criticism to the left. I just wish that at some point they would live up to a single standard or apply anything consistently across the board.
Thank you very much for that 10-minute opening statement as well, Stephen. We are going to switch it back to John for his 5-minute rebuttal. John, thanks very much. The floor is all yours.
It seemed to me like there was a lot there that was generally just firing from the hip at Republicans and specifically Donald Trump. And I think what it gets down to, which is what this debate often does, is just competing views of how politics actually works in this country. Destiny seems to be somebody who has faith in the establishment and the system, generally speaking, to do its job. And Donald Trump's political project is exactly the opposite of that. Donald Trump's political project was to go in and drain the swamp. And as anybody who's a Trump supporter knows, and maybe even laments, that did not exactly happen in his first administration. And it's because Donald Trump was the first president under the Republican ticket who was not awarded a mechanically functioning administration. Donald Trump, even George Bush, who I don't think anyone here maybe is a fan of the way that his administration functioned, but that administration functioned as it should have in the sense that George Bush was able to delegate and get things done. Donald Trump was not able to do this because there were so many people who understood that he was simply an irritant to an otherwise functioning, well-oiled machine, which is the Washington establishment. They didn't necessarily want to hitch their cart to that and taint a resume. Or you had Reince Priebus, the former head of the RNC. He had a Rolodex of names ready to go to fill these staffing positions. So it's not at all surprising to me that Trump was not able to execute the way that other presidents, including Republican presidents, were able to execute, because everything that Trump sought to do was a disruption of orthodoxies which have existed for 60 years and would like to exist after Donald Trump. And I think that a lot of those personnel issues have been resolved since. I think he understands some of the problems there. But I also think it's sort of nonsensical to conflate, sort of Republican delusion with Democrat delusion. Because when you have Republican delusion, that's like your aunt or uncle at dinner who says something like, I don't know, what if elites are like satanic and do crazy rituals? And it's like, yeah, that's crazy. Democrat delusion is like what these people run on. They run on the issue of, hey, what if we put an axe wound in between a child's legs? Wouldn't that be neat? Hey, what if we couldn't actually define like what a woman is? Things like that. Again, very low-hanging fruit, but simultaneously, I think very important to understand exactly which party is the one advertising and establishing power based on delusion. And so I didn't really hear much that was addressing the points I laid out directly in terms of why Trump did X. It was successful. Biden undid X, and now we are experiencing bad results because of that. And so in terms of Trump's staffing issues, again, you have an incentive there to not want to hitch your cart to that, whereas Kamala Harris had the highest overturning rate for her White House staff in history. It was like 92%. 92% of people who were working for her went away. They said, no, thank you, no more. What kind of leader is it where people who are the closest to her, working for her, in proximity to her, with no other incentive, no other obvious lily pad? I mean, you're working for Kamala Harris. That's maybe the future president. That's the vice president. They still left those jobs because working for her was such a nightmare. So the idea that she could somehow command and be a better executive than Donald Trump is just complete nonsense. Moreover, we haven't even heard that case. All we've heard is that Donald Trump is bad because Republicans are delusional or things like that. The tariff policy, I don't understand why we're against tariffs. Tariffs are like as American as apple pie. Every man who's on Mount Rushmore was a protectionist. 95% of all imports during the height of America's economic growth in the 19th and 20th century were tariffed. Biden even kept the tariffs that Trump implemented, so if they were so bad with the Chinese imports, I mean, you would think that he would have repealed those, but of course he didn't. He held on to them. So I think that, yeah, you know, the president is the executive. He doesn't have to necessarily pass bipartisan legislation to be an effective president. He is the executive, the chief executive. You know, Sam Francis once said that there are two parties in D.C. You have an evil party and a retarded party. And occasionally, those two parties get together and do something evil and retarded, and we call that bipartisanship. I think that's actually true. I don't think bipartisan legislation is an accurate measure for what makes a good leader. Congress has, what, a 2% approval rating on its best day, something like that? We think working with these people, these swamp rats, is actually indicative of what makes a good leader. A good leader is someone who can get in there and just pass his legislation through. We'll figure out the legality. I shouldn't say it. We'll pass his legislation, and, you know, it gets held up in the courts, as it often did with Trump, for example, when he was trying to work through the executive branch and get these different things done. Again, he passed what? The tax cut. Why? Because even though we maybe agree with tax cuts, ultimately the people who are in charge don't really have a problem with tax cuts. So you have deficit spending, like he said, when the government's taking in less revenue. I don't know what that deficit was precisely, but I bet that it was bigger than the amount that the wall would have cost. Why can't we have a wall? Why can't we have mass deportation? Because immigration is what benefits the ruling class, because we have more people coming in from other countries. They are reliant upon the establishment for money, opportunities, et cetera, which are then taken away from American citizens, as we've seen with the job growth, as we see with money that's going for relief, all sorts of different things. The Haitians, I don't know why, you know, I was driving through Ohio to get here. I never thought I'd see a Haitian in Ohio. Nothing against Haitians, it's just, you know, peas, apples and oranges, I guess. I don't know. But that should not be happening. We should not be prioritizing the interests of other people from all over the world like we have been during this administration. And Donald Trump dared to say that we can actually put America first. And that is why they have done everything in their power, be it lawsuits to assassination attempts, which my opponent this evening makes jokes about and thinks they're actually warranted, to stop this man, because he upsets those orthodoxies in a way that no one else dares.
Thank you very much for that 5-minute rebuttal. We'll switch back to Stephen for his 5-minute rebuttal. Stephen, the floor is yours.
Hey, tell me when I'm getting on time, okay? Because I don't have a timer in front of me, okay?
Will do.
Okay. All right. Or give me a 30-second notice. Okay. Okay. Well, Donald Trump talks about draining the swamp. I'm sorry. Donald Trump is the swamp. The most effective swamp that Donald Trump drained were his own cabinet members. When every single person around a guy, whether be it his personal people like Cohen, be it his own cabinet members like Rex Tillerson, people like Mike Pence, be it his own family members or his wife like Melania, who doesn't want to even be fucking seen with him, whether it's other people in office who are begging him to call off the rioters on January 6th, like when him and McCarthy got into a fight on the phone, every single person that has worked with Trump says that he is trash, and he is trash. How can you scream about having Jabba the Hutt draining the swamp when he is the swamp? Everywhere he goes is a swamp. If Donald Trump hadn't done The Apprentice, he would be a brokey crackhead wandering the streets of the Bronx or Manhattan trying to get a hit. He is a loser in every single part of his life, and the party backing him right now are losers. And I don't mean that in the abstract sense of let's have another 5-hour conversation about trans issues, but I mean that in the sense that his personal business adventures have been an epic failure. He's filed bankruptcy almost over half a dozen times, I believe. People from his prior administration have abandoned him. His own family is abandoning him. He is a convicted felon for a good reason, too. He's facing more felony charges. All of the lawyers that were working with him before have been either criminally indicted, criminally convicted, or in the case of people like Powell or Giuliani, disbarred, meaning they can't even practice law again, or Eastman as well. So the idea that we need to drain the swamp, Trump is the swamp, and he surrounds himself with the swamp. I've never seen people so gleefully line up to celebrate when a guy says, I fired the bad people, ignoring the fact that he hired the bad people too. You can't complain and cry about your own administration when it's your administration. And if you want to, that's fine, you could do that, but it just goes to further prove my point. Donald Trump is not the guy for the job. Even if you hate Kamala Harris, even if you think that Donald Trump's policies are good, he's clearly an ineffective leader, and I'm not willing to sit by for another 4 years while this guy takes another run at the office to see if maybe he he can figure out how the fuck to do his job this time, because he clearly was incapable of doing it last time. The Republicans, for the first time in the history of the United States Congress, weren't even able to keep their majority speaker seat because there was so much infighting in the party. It's absolutely insane that we would look at a party like this and think they're capable of governing. That you have a president that is trying to aggressively witch hunt into the ground all these people. You want to bring up concrete facts again? Look at Roy Collins' response in North Carolina today compared to under Trump's administration when they put in a request for some 800, I think it was what, $800 million, and they got like 8. They got 1% of the requested aid. You could Google this. North Carolina, 2017, requested financial aid, requested federal aid. You could find this. This is all real. They're all facts. There's no way to hide from them. You know what else is facts? You want to talk about draining the swamp? Why do you have pardon lists that people like Giuliani and Eastman are referring to when they're working for Donald Trump? Why are these people going into office assuming they're going to be breaking crimes, asking to be put on a pardon list afterwards? Why is Donald Trump pardoning people like Manafort, who's proven to work in Ukraine, the thing, and taking money without declaring it, the things that the Republicans so desperately have been trying to accuse Hunter Biden of doing for years? Why is Donald Trump pardoning people like Blackwater contractors who were responsible for massacres in the country of Iraq? I thought we didn't like foreign intervention. I thought we didn't like this type of foreign policy. I guess unless Donald Trump is saying things like we're going to kill the terrorist families or we're going to take all of the Syrian oil fields. I wish the Republican delusion was just about dinosaurs or oil, but unfortunately, the Republican delusion runs far deeper and is far sicker. You heard Doyle laugh and joke and say, well, you got to pass legislation and then figure out the legality afterwards. He's joking, but that's not a joke. That was the plan on January 6th. That's why Eastman said, we're going to try this particular thing, but if it gets tested to the courts, we'll probably lose 2-7. No, we'll probably lose 0-9. We'll probably lose every single Supreme Court justice. But you know what? I bet it won't even make it to court because it's a major political question. We're not even going to touch it. And that was the whole plan to overthrow the election. 80% of Republicans still to this day don't even believe that the results of the last election were real. So unfortunately, the delusion goes much further. You want to talk about what is a woman? Well, right now, according to a conservative, a woman could be a fucking fugitive of her state if she is crossing state lines because she might be going after an abortion. A woman might be somebody who you can track at the border if she wants to drive into another state that has legalized access to certain types of contraceptions or certain types of abortion procedures because you don't want her to be able to have an abortion.
30 seconds.
I mean, the idea that Republican delusion, doesn't run as deep as it does and isn't deeply rotting, not only in a character and moral sense, but also just in a procedural sense, is laughable. Again, you want to talk about Donald Trump, and the fact that tariffs are great. I don't know where that 95% number came from, but Donald Trump's big crowning achievements were tax cuts, which was deficit spending, and renegotiating the NAFTA agreement into the U.S. Mexico-Canada Free Trade Agreement, now which he wants to completely destroy with tariffs. So even the little bit that he did accomplish was either just deficit spending like they accused Democrats of doing, or something that he wants to blow up as soon as he gets into office anyway.
Time. Thank you very much, Stephen. We'll now move into the prepared questions. So I have one for each of you. We'll start with John. This is one that I think was briefly alluded to, but I want to give you a chance to both talk on this. As I mentioned earlier, John will have 5 minutes to respond, and then Destiny will have a 3-minute rebuttal to that response. For John, in the late May hush money trial this year, in which Donald Trump was convicted of 34 felony counts, the prosecutor in the case said it was, quote, a planned, coordinated, long-running conspiracy by Donald Trump to influence the 2016 election by paying off those who reported his bad behavior, unquote. Do you agree with the prosecutor that this was election interference, and should this, namely Trump's 34 felony counts, be a relevant factor for citizens deciding who they'll vote for this November?
I think it was a witch hunt. I don't think it's a relevant factor, and I don't think anyone actually thinks it's a relevant factor. I mean, his approval rating, his polling didn't significantly drop. You are simply firing at the hip, and you plug in convicted felon when you are attacking Donald Trump. But if it weren't convicted felon, then it would be, well, he was charged as it would be whatever it has to be to simply paint Orange Man as bad. Just like it's been, I mean, in 2016, it was the Russia collusion, and we've had things ever since then. We've had multiple impeachments, just painting this guy as like an absolute threat to democracy, literally Hitler. But then he gets in office and things are more or less like okay, actually. It's not the end of the world. His supposed delusion does not seem to be manifesting into the way that the country is, in the way that, the Biden administration or the Harris administration, which seems to be operating, I guess, on not delusional ideas, is actually manifesting in lower qualities of life for everybody who's in this country. I mean, real house net worth is down, incomes are down, crime is up, unemployment. I mean, people are not happy with the way things are going. If Trump is so delusional and crazy, why is it that he had higher approval ratings at this point in his administration than does Biden or Kamala? Kamala. I mean, Kamala had the lowest approval rating for any vice president before the incentive was given to be a cheerleader for her because she became the nominee after Biden had to step down and everything. So yeah, I absolutely believe that it was fake, and I think that voters are and should be disregarding it, because the question is ultimately not about these sort of trivialities. It's about who is going to actually create a better life for Americans. I think I laid out very clearly in my opening statement that Donald Trump can do that, has done that, and will once again do that. And I'm having to sort of deal with these things about Trump firing neocons, and I'm supposed to be really upset that that happened. Like, yeah, I mean, if you're going to build a foreign policy establishment and you want to posture as being strong, I'm going to hire the guy who wants to like make, I don't know, the entire Middle East into a parking lot, because I want them to know it's there, I might do it, and then when we have problems, maybe we fire him or things like that. Like, that computes to me, that makes sense to me. That is what I would do in that situation as a loyal MAGA patriot. I don't think that's necessarily delusional or anything like that. So yeah, I mean, again, Trump's political project was something that was ambitious. It was this idea that we are going to break free from party orthodoxies on immigration, which in the 2000s, you would get fired from mainstream conservative establishments for even hinting at, expressing attitudes, which now Trump is now endorsing and making the baby boomers at the RNC hold up signs in support of mass deportations. Things like trade policy, which again, you could not question. Things like foreign policy. I mean, your measure of republicanism up until Donald Trump was your expressed support for the wars in particularly Iraq, but broadly speaking, the Middle East. How Republican you are was defined by that. And then Donald Trump gets on stage with Jeb Bush and says, actually, the towers came down under your brother. We weren't safe. It was a big fat mistake. And he was booed. People forget that. He was booed by everybody in the audience, all the donors, all the special interests. And so this guy's not a leader, yet in the last 10 years, he has wrestled control of the party and made it his own. I don't care if the swamp has a problem with that, and there are hurdles. Obviously, we're trying to drain the swamp. Do you think these people are going to go kicking and screaming? I mean, they're theater kids. What else would they do if not work in D.C. as complete losers and sycophants? So yeah, that doesn't come as a surprise to me at all that there are going to be these problems. But remember, in 2020, he's out of office. You've got primary campaigns coming from DeSantis. People are blaming him for the disappointing midterm results. All these things. He manages to still wrestle control of his party to where now his transition team, the people in charge of filling his next administration, are loyalists. They are his family as opposed to the neocons and swamp rats they were. He's learned his lesson. This guy has managed to wrestle control of the Republican Party and make it more into his own. The entire RNC is Donald Trump Lollapalooza. I mean, this guy is the leader of the Republican Party, which is why when I drive here through the heartland of the country, I see Trump flags and Trump bumper stickers, because people understand that what Donald Trump means is a rejection of whatever the establishment orthodoxy is. It is a political identity that says, no thank you, I don't like what's going on, and that is why people love him, that is why people take bullets for him, and that is why people will stand out in the cold rain to see this guy speak whenever he goes. Kamala doesn't draw crowds like that. Obama could, but no other Democrat politician can even come close, because there's no energy, because people don't actually believe that these people have a vision for the country. They simply don't like Trump, which is why Destiny has not outlined a vision for the country. He simply does not like Trump. He is the same. I'm here tonight with you, the people, like Trump was. Destiny, like Kamala, his candidate, they are alike in this way, are coming in remotely. It is 1-to-1.
Much. Stephen, you have 3 minutes to respond to John. Floor is all yours.
Yeah, I want to point out a phrase that was used that is incredibly important to understand for people that are sycophantically aligned with Donald Trump, and that was the phrase loyal MAGA patriot. These people's allegiance is to Donald Trump before country. These people's allegiance is with the idea of Donald Trump and the epic name-calling before anything that was outlined in the Constitution, like our founding fathers said, or anything having to do with the way that our government runs. That's why MAGA patriots, like Biden so wisely said years ago in that horrific speech that he gave that conservatives love to obsess over with the red background, that MAGA Republicans are a threat to this country. And they are. They are exactly the type of illiberal, establishment disrespecting, absolutely no appreciation for process or rule of law people that represent one of the largest threats to this country. When you talk about every single thing that has to do with Donald Trump and all the good things, there are all these empty, worthless platitudes. Where's the legislation? There's none. If Donald Trump couldn't get legislation passed besides tax cuts with both halves of Congress, why would I ever expect him to get anything done the next time when he doesn't have both halves of Congress? And screw it, what does even having both halves of Congress mean? I should say all three halves of Congress, because in the House, the Republicans couldn't even keep their own party together. So the idea that Donald Trump is going to be some effective leader is absolutely ludicrous. And the record shows that. The record demonstrates that. You want to look at legislation under Biden, who's supposed to be an old, decrepit, and senile man? Then why is it that when Donald Trump talks about China, Joe Biden signs the CHIPS Act? Why is it that when Donald Trump talks about deficit spending and cutting costs in government, Biden gets the Inflation Reduction Act passed that actually offsets government spending by raising money? Why is it that when Donald Trump makes all of these empty promises, all we can do is blame every single person around him? Meanwhile, Biden says that he's a leader for all of America and he will lead all of America. And then coming up, I would expect Kamala Harris to do the exact same. If you want to talk about why nobody's talking about policies, or you want to make fun of the fact that Kamala Harris didn't have policies on her website for long enough, Donald Trump and the Republicans don't talk about policies. How many minutes did we make it into this debate before trans issues were brought up by the MAGA patriot on stage? And again, consult the record. You want to talk about empty witch hunts, and then you bring up Russiagate, which has turned out dozens of credible Russian indictments, which initially, I guess my friend on the stage didn't want to believe in, but now as we've gotten more indictments, we see that the Russian infiltration into our news cycle is way more extreme than any conservative is willing to admit, as we saw with the recent indictments and the statement by the FBI about the 600 or so other influencers, maybe the guy up on stage, who knows, that are also being paid off by foreign adversaries.
30
We're
seconds.
talking about empty witch hunts. What about the fact that the Bill Clinton-Monica Lewinsky thing came after 4 years of Ken Starr investigations into completely unrelated matters? What about the Hillary Clinton Benghazi email scandal, which turned out exactly 0 credible indictments? What about the Biden impeachment thing that was just moved through the House from Jim Jordan that didn't even recommend impeachment at the end because they couldn't literally find anything? What about the fact that Hunter Biden has been charged with federal crimes on tax fraud and lying on a 4473 because he was caught smoking drugs in a video? Meanwhile, Roger Stone, who owed over $2 million to the IRS, is just filing a civil agreement, a settlement, and just paying it off. Every single thing that the Republicans say is a projection of their own bad behavior on the other side. Never specific, never policy,
Stephen.
never piece of legislation, always a lie. All right.
And now I have a prepared question for Stephen. He'll get 5 minutes to respond, and then John likewise will get 3 minutes to respond to what Stephen said. Stephen, aside from no taxes on tips, how can Kamala help mitigate the current heavy cost of living for so many Americans trying to make rent or mortgage payments? In other words, are there any sort of blanket policies that might help those who don't make tips?
For me personally, I don't know if the tip thing is ever going to pass. For me personally, I think that expanding zoning is probably one of the most important things. I know that Kamala has talked about giving a large credit to first-time home buyers, which would obviously help people that haven't purchased a home before and people that aren't in real estate investing purchase a home. And I know that they've also talked about expanding things or making permanent, rather, the child tax credit for families, and people, especially with children, are some of the people that need homes the most. So ideally, that sort of federal redistribution of wealth to poorer families, especially those with young children that need larger homes, are going to be able to utilize that money in order to buy more homes. These are policies that I would expect would help a little bit, but I mean, on the aggregate, housing policy is something that really needs to be dealt with at the local level, and federal subsidies or federal money back to poor people can probably only do so much. I think that it's probably more important to focus on things that increase the overall health of our economy, like inviting high-skilled or immigrants of low skill that are willing to work into this economy rather than shutting them out, increasing trade so that knowledge, information, patent, our ability to export products continues to grow and increase, which grows and fosters a bigger demand for U.S. labor and U.S. technology, rather than what people like Trump and Doyle want to do, which is tariff everything, lock yourselves up, and shut the world down. I think having a strong foreign policy where we can protect tradeways like the Suez Canal, like Biden did to the Yemens, to the Houthis more explicitly, is important, rather than running away from the world stage and giving it all over to Russia and China and hoping that they look out for our good. And I think that having a friendlier disposition towards the world, where you're willing to, help your allies and be a strong leader and foster good relationships that allow for trade, for education, and for people to, really travel from one place to another, I think all would help the economy in a larger way that would help people be able to afford homes, in addition to the explicit federal policies that they set out relating to tax policy.
Stephen, thank you very much. We'll kick it over to John for his 3-minute rebuttal.
I would just say that in the phrase loyal MAGA patriot, you must understand that contained within that you have the phrase MAGA, which of course the A in MAGA stands for America. So I am a loyal American patriot, and I'm also a loyal MAGA patriot. And the difference specifically in this political context is that MAGA means Make America Great Again, which implies that we used to be a great country and now we're not so great, but we can restore that. That is something that we just have a fundamental disagreement on. Destiny seems to think that everything is going very well, and if it's maybe not, it's not because the political establishment has some sort of interest to harm the citizens of this country. It's just because we haven't exactly tweaked the policy in the way that it needs to be written, and so maybe if we just hire the right staff or something, that can be different. In terms of the president not getting policy done, again, I disbelieve that the Congress will actually pass legislation. I mean, famously, for example, Republicans can get tax cuts passed, great. Democrats can get infrastructure bills passed, great. These are not things that really, when it comes down to it, change the way our system works. I mean, you have money either being put back into our pockets or money being redirected into I don't know, to stimulate the economy because they tend to like the demand side of the curve a little bit more. The president is the chief executive. Donald Trump can get in there and he can still legislate through the executive branch and get things done because his job is to enforce laws. The laws are on the books. Joe Biden's administration is giving orders to those bureaucracies to not enforce those laws, to literally remove barricades from the southern border that were otherwise there so that migrants can come into the country illegally. And again, he ended on day one catch and release. These people are just in the country. They're criminals. They're other, I mean, some I assume are good people. But the point is, we don't know who these people are, and our government should be accountable to the American people. I mean, even as someone who's pro-democracy, I should think that you should appreciate that more so than this idea that we're somehow reliant on immigrants, let alone for labor or something. I believe in American exceptionalism. I don't think that we need anybody else in the world to show America how to build a society. I think that the West, broadly speaking, built the modern world. I think we have plenty of people here. I don't think that we need these people coming over from other countries to take jobs that would otherwise go to Americans, especially when American college graduates can't get jobs. They're sitting through multiple interviews if they're even lucky to get interviews. They're not able to work in the fields that they go into college for, and so I don't think it's very patriotic to then take those jobs and offer them up to whoever wants to come over here from China or India or wherever.
Much. We are going to jump into the open dialogue. This is 10 minutes. Gentlemen, thank you very much. I'll let you take it from here.
You know, you mentioned the CHIPS Act as an example of successful Biden legislation. Isn't it accurate that I think since August of 2024, none of that has actually come to fruition? They've had delays with plant manufacturing in Arizona. Nothing's gone on in Ohio. South Korea, I suppose, is delaying the construction in the Arizona factory. I mean, how could you say that the policy is effective because we got it through Congress, but it's not actually coming to fruition yet? And it's been, what, 2022 that was passed or something?
What do you think it means for something to come to fruition?
I think it means you'd start to see construction in the factories. You'd start to see chips being distributed.
So you're telling me you don't think any large companies have allocated money towards factories? The fact that you're saying things are getting delayed already betrays the premise that you're saying that nothing has been done. The fact that there is a delay means that the process is already working. The money has already been allocated from the federal budget, meaning there are already companies that are setting up shop to take advantage of it, meaning that it's already working its way through the system in order to get those plants built. I don't know why you would say, you see how there's a delay here? Does that mean nothing is going on? Well, no, if nothing is going on, there'd be nothing to delay.
There are delays, though, because of certain initiatives from the administration, such as DEI initiative, climate change initiatives, which introduce different impediments which otherwise wouldn't be there. Moreover, everything is more expensive now because of the energy policy of your administration. I mean, again, things are getting more expensive. The country's in the toilet. Your answer to this is,
which DEI initiative came from the Biden administration?
Sorry. What'd you say?
What was it? Which DEI initiative came from the Biden administration that's slowing things down?
The whole monster. I mean, that's like the entire. It's the way the whole thing works. Is you have to have different initiatives.
I'm going to ask the same question when you're done rambling. I just want to know what one policy or initiative from the Biden admin that was the DEI initiative that is affecting businesses. I'm going to ask the same thing when you do your platitudes when you're done. Just letting you know.
I didn't hear. Okay, sorry, I didn't hear what you said. I'm in person. I did not hear that.
What DEI initiative? What specific policy? What specific regulation?
Yes, I know. You're asking me for a source.
Law?
I am not in front of my laptop. I cannot exactly name.
I didn't ask you for a source.
Do you deny the existence of those sources, though? Are you saying there is no initiative? There is no DEI initiative or climate change initiative? I'm just making that up. There are no impediments. It would be the same under this administration as it would be under the Trump administration.
Okay. Well, the audience can decide for themselves. Like I said, it's empty platitudes. It means nothing. DEI initiatives, climate change initiatives, like none of these words are boogeymen. They mean nothing. You're just saying things that are supposed to be spooky and scary.
Again, do you deny the existence of those? Just because I can't name specifically, those just don't exist. There's no DEI initiative. There's no climate change initiative. It's all just nonsense.
When you say climate change initiative, I mean, climate change was a big part of the infrastructure bill. There's a lot of money that was allocated for certain types of infrastructure renewals that tended to favor, but are these bad? Are you saying that is this what you were referring to? Were you referring to the infrastructure bill when you said climate change initiatives? What DEI initiatives were you referring to? I don't know what you're talking about.
Right.
It's a boogeyman.
When you're doing something like constructing factories to build microprocessors, if there are initiatives in place that you have to go through, such as dealing with making sure everything is environmentally friendly and green, whatever that means. That's why even Biden said on the hot mic that this was just their version of the Green New Deal. We got it done because it was environmentally oriented in the construction of those factories. That is to what I am referring, and that definitely is a real thing.
I'm sorry, so the alternative is we should be making new factories that aren't environmentally friendly? Is that what you're seriously arguing for?
That's not what I mean. That's obviously not what I mean. I am simply saying that there are initiatives which exist under this administration which would not exist in other administrations, which could be why, in response to everything that's happened in this country, your big success is, well, we at least got the microprocessors underway, and it's like, okay, well, we have 15,000 convicted murderers now who are in the country through the southern border because your president removed barricades that have enabled these people to now just flood into the country from we don't even know where.
You know that 15,000 number, you're not accurately citing that, right? That 50, first of all, I think the number is 14,000, and that is with the totality of non-citizens that are in the country that have committed a violent crime. They didn't all come in the 4 years that are Biden. You're making that up. You can Google 14,000 homicides or 14,000 violent crime and look up that number to pretend that they all came in. Also, what they all came in through the southern border, where the federal government, by the way, has exclusive purview to do immigration policy. That's where they all came in from. How would you even know that? Are they just watching them come in and writing them down in a notebook? And then, like, even the premise of this, again, is ridiculous. It's all like boogeyman bullshit. If you care about the border so much, why are you happy that Trump blocked the bill?
Well, because again, that immigration bill was not actually addressing things substantively. They were trying to score political points because Americans are expressing anxiety about immigration, which is to say they're unhappy with the way that the Biden administration has handled it. Because again, on day one, you have to tell me, why did he stop doing the things that Trump had? Why did he halt the construction of the border wall? Why did he end Remain in Mexico? Why did he do things that would make it easier for people to come in through, yes, the southern border, into our country? What benefit does that serve to American citizens?
There is no... Yeah, so there was no border wall under Trump. It just never happened. Nothing in Congress ever got done in regards to a border wall. So everything you're saying about that is fantastic.
That's not true. He was building
that
new
border bill.
wall.
When you say the border bill was political points, killing the border bill was political points, definitionally so. Donald Trump killed it to win politically. But to say that the bill was bad because it didn't address anything substantively, what's lacking in substance for more funding for asylum processes? What's lacking in substance for allocating more judges to process immigrants? What's lacking in substance? Why did the Border Patrol support this bill? What's lacking in substance to staffing the border with more agents to defend our border? Which of these things are lacking in substance?
I think, well, because if you are bringing more judges in to process these cases, that does not mean that the cases are going to go in a way that I would like. That just means these people are going to more easily be able to enter into the country. It's not as though if you had more judges and more resources, it would somehow be better able to secure itself as a southern border. They would simply be allowed to, in greater number and with more expediency, waltz into the country and disappear into God knows where.
If you think that the goal of the judges is to just rubber stamp everybody coming in, then why would Biden need to hire more judges at all? Wouldn't every single asylum judge just say, oh, you're in, oh, you're in, oh, you're in?
No,
do you not want to process them?
How
about you just say what you actually want, because you want to shut down all immigration? Just say that. You don't want any immigrants coming in. Just say that. Be honest.
Yeah, I've said that for 5 years. That is exactly my point.
Okay,
yeah.
then don't say the border bill lacks substance. Just say you disagree with it because you're opposed to immigration. Also, when you say American exceptionalism, what do you believe in? Do you believe in American exceptionalism or British exceptionalism? Because I don't understand what you mean when you say American exceptionalism and then you're anti-immigration. Like, where do you think Americans come from? They come from other countries, right? Unless you live on a Native American reservation and you want to see the expansion of their territory.
When America was becoming America, immigration was coming from a different part of the world, I think a part of the world that was approximately the size of Florida. Now we are getting people from, we'll say, places that are maybe a little bit less compatible. And I don't think that they're assimilating very well, and I think that pretty much any metric by which you choose to evaluate that would vindicate the truth of that. And so when I say America doesn't need immigration, I don't mean America doesn't need people from Japan or people from Northwest Europe. I mean America probably doesn't need Haitians. That's specifically what I mean.
I agree. Sure. And I think that there's a large point of agreement there. I do think that there are a lot of immigrants that have trouble assimilating to society today, but that's because half of the society that you want them to assimilate to possess no American values. And by that, I mean the conservative party. I expected to see Spanish people, Haitian people, whoever, marching on the Capitol or marching to tear down this country, and that's not what I've seen. I've seen conservatives that are destructive to the country in every single way. You don't believe in the rule of law. You don't believe in how the government works. You don't share foundational American principles relating to liberalism, relating to respect for free speech or the media. These are the foundational core aspects that make you an American. And right now, the issue that we have is the conservative side of the country, not immigrants. It's not the people that are coming into the country and not eating the cats and dogs that are a threat. It's the people who are saying that they saw it on TV when it's not even happening.